Hello, and welcome to the chaos of this video. Look at her, just sleeping in the grass. What a goddess. In all seriousness, this is my first YouTube video that isn't just a poem. I have one other video up that is a poem that I posted back in February, and I meant to start making more videos since then, but that just didn't happen. I had a lot going on. But basically I posted that original little poem in honor of my sister who died, and also to kind of push me to make more videos. I don't even know if it was like, I have like weird feelings about that video and whether or not I should keep it up, but it was the initial push and that's what got me here. So today's video, I thought it'd be fun to do the AuthorTube tag. I know there's like 2 versions of it. I'm going to do the first one, and then probably in a few months I'll do the second one. But I'm also going to start off with some facts. So, hello darlings, my name is Ashley Marie Egan, and fact number 1, I am a bisexual poet and writer. Fact number 2 is that I am a ovo-lacto vegetarian. I've been some sort of vegetarian for 13 years. I was 15 going on 16. It's been a long time. Sorry, I'm not good with math, but it's in the teens. I think it's around 13 or 14 years that I have been some sort of vegetarian. I started as a pescatarian and then went to ovo-lacto vegetarian, and I hope to one day be vegan, so we'll see if that happens. And on the subject of animals, I will lean into fact number 3, is that I have 6 pets. I have 3 cats, even though I'm allergic to them, and 3 dogs. They all have cute stories that go behind how we got them, and I would be willing to share that one day. On to the next fact. So number 4 would be that I'm a self-taught lifelong writer and that I did not go to college. And that's not necessarily something that I intended to happen. In fact, it's not something I intended to happen. But my schooling experience would be an entire video. It's long and traumatic, and I'm not going to get into it, but that's my background. I did not go to college. And my 5th fact about me is that I'm also a self-taught photographer and artist. And with all of my crafts, I feel like I learn the more that I do and the more that I look at other people's works and read other people's works. And it's just, I think it's also great because you can see how much you've changed. And I feel like the more you do of anything, the better you get at it. And so those are the 5 facts I wanted to start with as just an introduction to me. And I also want to just quickly apologize for the background. It's been very overcast here, and it's been really hard to get any type of good lighting. The sun does not want to come into the house. My overhead lights make everything look orange, so I'm just using this 1 ring light with the lights off and right in front of a window, like I am in front of a window. So I apologize for that. I'd usually try to avoid the treadmill being in anything. It's like the catch-all right now. It just has so much stuff on it that I need to organize, but so I apologize for that. I'll try to be more aesthetic in the future. But let's get on to the AuthorTube tag. I will list the original video and the author of the tag in the description. Question number 1, how did you find out about AuthorTube? I would say that I found out that there's an established community on AuthorTube maybe a year ago, And that's when I started to get interested in maybe making my own content and seeing if YouTube will work for me or not. Some people thrive on video and some people don't, and I have no idea which one I will be. But that's where the fun is, I guess, and figuring it out. Question number 2. What genres do you write in? I write poetry, and when it comes to stories, I would say young adult, horror, fantasy, sci-fi, drama. Pretty much, I dabble in everything but westerns, and I would say, well, I can't really say I don't dabble in nonfiction. I don't read nonfiction, but I have written like nonfiction articles and like creative nonfiction essays and stuff like that. So I'm interested in writing and everything. I've even written some stories for children. So I don't really feel like I have a limitation of what I wouldn't do, except for maybe westerns or historical fiction, because I just don't think those are two things that particularly interest me, but you never know. I could wake up one day and be like, I've got a western in me. I'm gonna write it. And then I'll write it, and then that'll be it. No. You never know. Like, I'm chaotic like that. Question number 3. What is your preferred writing tense, point of view, and category of story? Writing tense, past and present. I don't know if people write in like future tense. I don't know if that's a thing. Maybe it is. I tend to write in past, but I have written in like present tense, and I have no problem with it, and I think it has its place. I tend to just go with what feels natural for the story. And when it comes to point of view, usually first or third. I haven't tried second. It doesn't feel natural for me in how I write. So I usually go with what feels natural for me and for the story. And that's usually first or third. And category of story, I don't know if I would say I have a preferred. I do, I guess, lean towards, I would say fantasy, sci-fi, paranormal, kind of realm, but I also lean towards things that are more real and personal. I think in general, my favorite category of story is just writing something that's unafraid to be what it's meant to be, and unafraid to tell its story and to be raw and real about whatever it's about, whatever it's trying to say. And it doesn't have to be in a certain genre or category or anything. As long as I'm writing truthfully, that's all that really matters to me. And I know that can sound weird, like how are you writing truthfully if you're writing like fantasy or sci-fi, but just because something is abstract from our reality doesn't mean that it doesn't have a point in it that is very true to us as humans, because I am a human, and therefore I write of the human experience, even if I'm not writing a human, if that makes sense. Like, I can't be an alien or a vampire or something like that. But I can try to imagine as a human how they might react, if that makes sense. If that doesn't make sense, just ignore everything I just said, because I wouldn't blame you. The next question. Are you a plotter, pantser, or plantser? Okay, so I would say that I started off as a pantser, but that got me into a lot of trouble with the book I'm working on, the novel I'm working on. Pantsing seems fun and games, but if you don't pay close attention to your word count, you can end up in a lot of trouble. And I will probably do a video on all the mistakes I made writing this particular book on a different video. But now I would say I'm more of a plantser. I like to plot out enough that I know where I'm going in the story overall and in the chapter. But I'm not such a plotter that I have to know everything. I know some writers will plot out everything that's happening in the chapter. That's not necessary for me. I like my characters to have room to grow and to decide what they want to do. And if you're not a writer, that might sound weird, but when you're writing, you know, sometimes your characters change and they become something unexpected to you, and they'll just end up doing something you had not planned. And that might be a nightmare for a plotter. I don't know. But for me, that's exciting. I love when I'm writing something and something unexpected happens, and I didn't expect it to go down that way. Or a character ends up being completely different than what I intended them to be. So I'm more of a plantser now. I do like to just leave room to see what will happen, but I also acknowledge that it's important to know where you're going. Next question. Are you self-published, published, or yet to be published? Okay, so when it comes to poetry, I am self-published. I have a book called The Elements Between Us, as you can see right here. It's a collection of poetry, photography, and art. It came out, I think, almost 3 years ago. Not quite 3 years ago. It's full color, and it's my baby. This was a real learning experience. When I went to make this book, I didn't really have a lot of poet friends, and so I had to make a lot of mistakes and, you know, go on the journey very much alone, but that's okay. I learned a lot. The poems in this book were written, I think, between like 2015 and 2018. So it's a collection through, you know, several years, and it's a book about the relationships that we have in life and the different effects that they have on you. And I would say it's probably a light read because like the collection I'm working on right now is really serious and really a lot darker and heavier. But this one is lighter, has some sadder pieces, some happy pieces, some steamy pieces. It's a real mix, but I'm proud of her. She's my baby, and she got me started on this journey of publishing, and I'm definitely proud of the work I did here. I definitely want to get traditionally published next time. That's been a big dream of mine, is to be a traditionally published author. So I'm hoping my next collection will be traditionally published. I've also been published in 2 anthologies as well, and online. When it comes to stories, however, I haven't been published yet. I haven't really sent out any of my short stories to be published, and the novel I'm working on isn't ready yet, but I'm hoping that it will be traditionally published. That is the goal. That's my answer. I'll do a whole video on The Elements Between Us and my journey through making it, the mistakes I made, and I'll read some of the poems and show some of the art pieces in a different video. But if you are interested in checking her out, she's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble Online, and Book Depository. I used to have some signed copies on Etsy, but I don't at the moment. On to the next question. What publishing company, literary agent, and or printing company are you represented by or use? If you're not published yet, what is your dream publishing house and or literary agent? So I don't have an agent or a like publishing house or anything. I published The Elements Between Us on Amazon. Sorry, that took me a minute. So I published this on Amazon, and It's free. I know how to use Photoshop, so I made this cover myself. I had an original cover that was awful, and I ended up changing it to this one. But, so I did everything myself. But to answer the question, like, who's my dream publishing house and or literary agent? For poetry, I'd love to be published with Andrew McMeel's publishing house, because they work with their authors and they respect their creative vision. And as someone who likes to include visuals in her poetry collections, that's very appealing to me. But I'm sure there are plenty of other publishing houses as well that are worth a look. I haven't really compiled a full list yet. I'm still working on the second collection, and then I'll do that. But that's the dream at the moment. When it comes to stories and novels, I don't really have a dream publishing house per se. Yes, it would be really cool to be represented by like a big publishing house, like I don't know, like Simon & Schuster. I think that's one. Or, any of those big people. But, an indie publisher could arguably do just as much or more for you. So really, what I'm looking for when getting published and when looking for an agent or a publisher is just someone who is passionate about me and my story, and someone who really feels like they can, push this story and advertise it and market it, and that they feel like it has a place and that it will be at home with them, if that makes sense. I'm just looking for someone who will be just as passionate about what I'm doing as I am, and I think that's just as important as anything else when it comes to this particular question. Next question. All right. What AuthorTube related videos can we expect to find on your channel? Great question. So you can expect to find, like my journey, my writing journey, vlogs, challenges, maybe writing sprints, and advice. Obviously, like I said, I didn't go to college. I'm not a teacher, so any advice I'll only give advice on things that I feel like that I could give advice on and it makes sense and it be relevant. But, when it comes to making content for AuthorTube, I know that there's a lot of like repeated content, so I'll try to be as original as possible. I'll also be, posting poetry videos, which I hope to become more creative at and present it in a way that's, visually entertaining to people as well. But I'll also be posting some non-author related content on here too, some lifestyle stuff, and I'm just going to try to keep it fun. I want to obviously make content about writing and also photography and art, but I also want to make stuff that's fun and that will be entertaining for everyone, hopefully. And so you can expect a variety of content on the channel. At least that's the plan right now. And I do hope that anyone who's watching this will enjoy what I make. And that's pretty much the plan right now for AuthorTube. Okay, the next question. When did you start writing? Okay. So I started writing when I was 8. That's when I started writing stories. And I started writing poetry when I was 10. And that's a rough estimate. Whenever I tell people that, it's a rough estimate because I'm not fully the best at knowing exact ages when things happened in my life, but it's like within a year. So 8 could be 9, 10 could be 11, but it's not any bigger than that. It's like a year before or a year earlier, or the exact year. And the next question is, what was the first story you ever wrote? So in this case, I'll tell you about the first story and the first poem I ever wrote. So when I was 8 years old, my mom got me a black journal with a silver gel pen to write in. And I went out into the front yard. We had this dogwood tree that was next to what I used to call a railroad track, but it was really just this wooden platform for cars that kind of looked like a railroad track. And I went there and I wrote my first story. And it was a horror story about me and my best friend messing around with witchcraft and accidentally summoning a demon with a pumpkin like face or mask on. And so in the story, we're running around the neighborhood trying to escape him. And by the end of the story, I don't remember it clearly, but by the end of the story, she ends up being eaten by the demon, and the demon possesses me. And then I believe I go on, like, I run away from home and just like become like this demonic child. So that was the first story I ever wrote. I know that's will probably be like, what, to some people, but that was my first story. It comes from a lot of places. I have some childhood trauma, and there was also this story that me and my friend told each other to try to spook each other. That there was like this guy who died in my neighborhood, who was the pumpkin man, and he would come up and try to get us. So that was like a running gag, and I actually wrote a story about that like last year. But so that was my first story. My first poem I wrote when like I said, when I was around 10 years old. We had this little pamphlet, I guess, or a little book about Shakespeare, and it had Sonnet 118 in it, and I read it on my bed, and then I just put it down, and I picked up a notebook, and I started writing poetry, and that was when I started writing poetry. It was right then, after reading Sonnet 118. It was the first poem I had ever read before. I wasn't used to poetry. I had already started writing like lyrics before, and I mean, it might have not been the first poem. Like there might have been like some kids' poetry that I read when I was younger that I like don't remember now, but it was like the first, I guess, adult poem I ever read, and I was very inspired by it. And so I just picked up a notebook and I started writing poetry, and I've been writing ever since. So thanks Shakespeare for writing Sonnet 118. Okay, the next question. What authors have inspired your writing the most? Okay. This is a tricky question for me, but I'll do my best. When it comes to poetry, it's Shakespeare, Poe, Emily Dickinson, and Sylvia Plath. So those were poets I read when I was younger, and they all spoke to me in different ways. Obviously, Shakespeare was my introduction, so I kind of became obsessed with Shakespeare. I love his work to today. And Poe, when I was introduced to him in middle school, his work spoke to me in that, like, it made me feel less weird for liking macabre things. And I think when you're younger, anything that makes you feel less alone really just sparks something in you. And so I've been a huge fan of Poe ever since then. Emily Dickinson, she was the first female poet I ever read. And so that stayed with me as well. Plath is very known for confessional poetry, which is very popular with women today and something that I write a lot myself. And I think it speaks to women because she's just unafraid to be honest, whether it's pretty or if it's ugly or it hurts or it doesn't. And I think that speaks to women in a way because women are often taught to be silent. And so confessional poetry is a way to learn how to use your voice. And I think that's why Plath speaks to so many women and young girls. Now, when it comes to writing, that's when it's a little trickier for me because I can't really track back a certain source for my inspiration to write stories. I don't know why. I just feel like I just started doing it. But I did write down a few authors that I do feel like had some type of inspiration for me. Jane Austen. I really love classic literature. I was like that kid in school who enjoyed reading almost everything that was assigned to me except for Oliver Twist, which I loathe entirely. But that's a different story and I'm not getting into it. Point is, I enjoyed most of what we were forced to read. To me, it didn't feel like being forced to read it. I really enjoyed almost all of it except for Oliver Twist and maybe The Great Gatsby. I prefer the movie on that one, to be honest. And not even like the older movie, like the one with Leonardo DiCaprio. But otherwise, I enjoyed everything I read, and a lot of those books are still some of my favorite books to today. And Jane Austen was one of those authors that we read, a few different stories of, and I always just kind of enjoyed how I was able to be transported back into that time, and her work is so, I'm going to say, softly feminist because of the time period. Obviously, you'll probably find more feminist work today, but there was a soft feminism to it. But it was also beautiful and unafraid to say what I wanted to say, which, like I said, is something that I enjoy. Mary Shelley. I love Frankenstein. Frankenstein is one of the best horror stories ever written. It's such a human story. It reminds me of the consequence of science and how, even today, they're trying to bring back the woolly mammoths, but they're not asking, should I bring them back? Are there going to be consequences to bringing them back? Do they have a place in this world? And once we bring them back, are we going to treat them like animals or property? And I feel like not enough of those questions are being asked and answered by the scientists who are trying to do it. And then once you do bring back the woolly mammoths, which will not be fully woolly mammoth because they're going to have to mix it with, I think they're going to go with an Asian elephant. What else are they going to want to bring back? And why not use this technology to create more of the species we already have on the planet that are endangered and dying out? And that's just kind of one of the things that Frankenstein reminds me of, is that scientists sometimes do because they can and never stop to think on if they should. Not to quote, the Jeff Goldblum from Jurassic Park, but Frankenstein's monster, he isn't really a monster, and that's what's at the heart of the story, is how the doctor's the monster. He's the one who did this, and I think that speaks a lot to the flaws of humanity. God, I went on a tangent for that. And to not go on a tangent about anyone else, Stephen King has always been a big deal in my family, so I would say he's a big inspiration to me. Cassandra, I think her name's Cassandra Clare, the one who wrote the Shadowhunters series. I really love her writing style, so I think that's been an inspiration to me. And the problematic J.K. Rowling, she definitely inspired me when I was younger, when I was reading Harry Potter. So I have to be honest about that. But then there's just like books, individual books that spoke to me. And one of those are The Perks of Being a Wallflower. That book really, really, like, just... I don't even know how to describe it. It just did something to me. I read it and was just, like, permanently affected by it. And it will always stay with me. It will always be one of my favorite books. So that definitely affected me. And I could go on and on. I feel like I could compile a list of like individual books and works. Next question. Do you schedule your writing sessions or simply get to writing whenever you can find the time? Right now it's whenever I can find the time, but I'm currently working on changing my schedule so that I can schedule it in and get more work done. Now on to the next question. Do you type on a computer, typewriter, write everything out by hand, or use a blend of those things? And where do you write in general? I use a blend of typing on a computer and of handwriting. So usually I handwrite notes. I'll handwrite plots and like character information, all kinds of notes. Notes are handwritten. I actually have a bulletin board too that's just filled with sticky notes for the current like book I'm working on. And I usually write at my desk, which is where I usually film, where I was going to film this video, but it's way too dark over in that corner now. The next question. What are you most looking forward to now that you're part of AuthorTube? Making new writer friends, networking, and trying to build a following. That's what, if we're going to be real honest, being on social media in general is trying to build a following, especially as a creative. You want people to be interested in you and your work. But I think it's just as important to make friends and to meet people who are in the same field as you and to network with them. Those are all important things. And I love making new writer friends. I made new poet friends on Instagram, and now we're in a poetry Discord together, and it's been really enjoyable to do Zoom calls with them and to even play video games with them, and that's been really enjoyable to me. And so yeah, I hope that I can make some friends here, and I hope I can get some people to watch these videos and that I'm not just doing it for my dog's entertainment. So those are all the questions. I feel like I went a little bit too chatty. This is actually the second time I filmed this video, and the first time, again, the lighting was so bad because of all the overcast. And it ended up looking so orange because I used my overhead light, and I was like, this is awful, I can't use this. So I decided to refilm it, and I was like, I'm going to be concise. I'm not going to give super long answers. And then I gave super long answers anyway. I have issues. But thank you so much. If you made it through this long video, you're a star. You deserve extra points. I don't know. Here are your bonus points. And thank you for making it this far. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more from me, please, hit the like button, subscribe, do the little bell thing for reminders, all that jazz. Leave a comment if you have anything you want to say or any suggestions for the channel. Just let me know in the comments below. And thank you so much for making it this far. I really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next video. Bye! My cat just ran out into the woods. Sorry. Sometimes, wait. I think I went into a weird, chaotic... Okay, no. freaking throat. It reminds me of the